Hi there, I'm Steve Horstmeyer, Chief Meteorologist here at Fox 19. Welcome to our winter weather special. In the next half hour, we'll be talking winter storms, not only here in Cincinnati, but in many parts of the world. And we'll give you a lot of information, maybe some of it you didn't even know. Also along later in the show will be meteorologist Katie Morgan, Frank Marzullo, and Jeff Creighton with their take on what interests them about winter weather. Now, long before I pick up this clicker and head towards the green screen, we've been working on winter storms for days and days and days. Models nowadays allow us sometimes to look at them more than 10 days ahead of time, so that by the time we get here to the studio, we have a great idea of how the weather may affect you and how a storm may impact your life. So that by the time I step up here and turn to the camera and say, "Hi everybody, I'm Steve Horstmeyer," we have a winter storm to talk about. And by the time the first flakes are falling, we're geared up, we're ready to go to keep you informed from beginning to end. Now, here's Jeff Creighton.
If you ask a longtime Cincinnatian, what's the worst snowstorm you remember? The answer invariably is the Great Blizzard of 1978. And while snowfall across Cincinnati only reached 6.9 inches, it was not the only concern with this particular storm. In fact, we've seen quite a few winter storms that have produced more snowfall. No, it was not just the snow. The Great Blizzard of 78 combined snow and so much more. Let's take you back to January 25th, 1978. Now, by 1 a.m. on the 26th, blizzard conditions had started in Cincinnati, and by 7 a.m. extended into the Cleveland area. Visibilities were near zero for much of the day and even into the 27th. With the rapidly intensifying low pressure, wind gusts averaged 50 to 70 miles per hour through the day of the 26th. In Cleveland, sustained winds 86 miles an hour with gusts to 111. Temperatures fell from the 30s and 40s into the single digits in only a few hours. Wind chills reached minus 50, making any outside venture particularly dicey. By the 27th, as the storm wound down, snowfall was difficult to measure due to the strong winds, but official storm total snowfall amounts from January 25th to the 27th ranged from 4.7 inches in Columbus to 6.9 inches in Cincinnati to 12.9 inches in Dayton. Other areas across the region saw well over a foot of snow from this storm. The area of low pressure was so strong that the barograph at the National Weather Service office at CVG had to be readjusted. The pressure drop was so great it caused the pen to fall off the initial chart scale. In Cleveland, the barometer fell to 28.28 inches, which remains the lowest ever recorded in Ohio and one of the lowest on record within the mainland of the U.S. not associated with a hurricane. The death toll across the region, 70, 5 in Kentucky, 11 in Indiana, and 51 in Ohio, 22 of those as the result of exposure as people abandoned their vehicles or homes with no heat. Prior to 1978, there was another notable blizzard across Ohio, and a football game was played in that snow. The Ohio State-Michigan football game on November 25th, 1950, as known as the Snow Bowl for obvious reasons. As explained in the alumni magazine Ohio State University Monthly, the game was played in the teeth of a full-scale blizzard, 5 inches of snow on the ground and snow whistling through the air borne on a 29-mile-an-hour gale. Despite the fact that it was the worst blizzard in 37 years in Columbus, the Ohio Capitol easily defended its title as the football craziest town in the nation. A total of 50,503 people braved the elements, staying below deck under the stadium until just a few minutes before kickoff. The snow, wind, and insecure footing made the game a mockery, an imitation of football only by the stretch of the imagination. The two teams huffed, puffed, bumped, and slid. Cold Hand refused to hang on to the ball, and at the end of 60 minutes of football, sliding and kicking, Michigan emerged on the long end of a 9-3 count. Now, the worst snows that we get occur when it's cold and remains cold. Steve Horstmeyer is in the weather lab to explain how we get snow when it's above freezing.
Hi there, I'm Steve Horstmeyer, Chief Meteorologist here at Fox 19. Time for another edition of Weather Lab. One of the questions I get asked a lot in the winter is how can it snow when the temperature's above freezing? Well, here's how that happens. First of all, to this nice scene, we'll add a little bit of a cloud layer. So you add the clouds here, and those clouds contain the moisture that will become the snow. Over here in the farm, it's about 37 degrees, but snow can still reach the ground. And as you see here, snow often does reach the ground when the temperature's above freezing. Well, if it's below freezing up in the clouds, And if it is well above freezing at the surface, somewhere in between we have to have the freezing level. So the freezing level in this case is below cloud base. If the freezing level is very high, the snow will fall and melt on the way down and become rain. However, when the freezing level drops closer and closer and closer to the ground, literally the snowflakes don't have time to melt before they get here. As a result, we end up with snow and temperatures above freezing. Thanks for joining me.